Warning: the themes and topics presented in this video may contain sensitive material that may be triggering or disturbing to some viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. COVID-19, a global phenomenon that has altered all of our lives, some more than others. At times, it caused many of us to ask, will life ever go back to normal? And if so, will we ever really be the same?
Before the pandemic, I was good. Had an apartment, I was doing well, and then, around the time the pandemic started, that's when things really started going downhill.
Just like many of you, these are the questions I've asked myself time and time again as we learn to live life in an age of uncertainty and fear, at times forcing ourselves to be apart from the ones we love, all in an effort to contain the spread of COVID-19. But the truth is, despite the recent development of vaccines, keeping the virus under control still remains a challenge. And there's growing evidence that suggests a concurrent mental health crisis may prove an even greater challenge due to a rapid increase in unemployment, isolation, and generalized anxiety. And since I'll be taking a course through my university, which requires me to study adolescent mental health, I wanted to understand more about it and its prevalence within social and geographical contexts. With that being said, the topics discussed in this video will draw from a number of personal interviews, scholarly articles, and meta-analyses that will help us understand the following. Which groups of people are more at risk for developing mental health complications as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, the psychosocial ramifications of social distancing and isolation, and the effects of prolonged stress brought on to those offering professional help to individuals affected by the concurrent mental health crisis. In one meta-analysis published to the U.S. National Library of Medicine National Institute of Health in June of 2020, there's enough evidence to suggest that people directly affected by COVID-19 may have a higher burden of mental health problems, including depression, anxiety disorders, stress, panic attacks, irrational anger, impulsivity, sleep disorders, emotional disturbance, post-traumatic stress symptoms, and even suicidal behavior. In fact, according to the World Health Organization, each suicide in a given population is accompanied by more than 20 suicide attempts. Thus, the number of mentally distressed people who might seek help from mental health services can be expected to increase within the context of the COVID-19 pandemic. This photograph was taken in May of 2020 aboard Majesty of the Seas, one of Royal Caribbean Cruises' most reputable passenger ships. In a troubling article by Austin Carr, published to Bloomberg Businessweek on December 30th, 2020, he recounts the nightmare that unfolded on a number of Carnival cruise lines and Royal Caribbean cruise ships throughout much of the pandemic, citing the mysterious death of a man by the name of Joseph Saller, who had been working aboard the Carnival Breeze. Carr goes on to write that in November, a coroner in Winchester, England concluded that Joseph had died due to hanging and suggested it was likely an impulsive yet intentional and self-administered act under the influence of alcohol. This, as you may imagine, has turned into a full-blown legal dispute between Saller's family and Carnival Cruise Lines due to the international company denying any responsibility for Joseph Saller's alleged suicide. However, Carr goes on to write that the Saller family attorney says the company should have known the hazards of isolating employees for indefinite periods and provided them with the appropriate mental health support, not unfettered access to booze, wine, and beer. On December 21st, the Sallers served Carnival a demand for arbitration, alleging the company forced Joseph to stay in his cabin for prolonged periods, failed to routinely monitor his well-being despite days of absence, and didn't provide adequate training on how to deal with the mental effects of isolation. And it was never suggested he was having mental health challenges. And as of right now, December 30th, 2020, Joseph Soller has not yet been declared legally deceased, although his passing took place on May 9th, 2020, over 7 months ago. But Joseph Scheller's case is just one of the many fatalities that occurred aboard dozens of cruise lines throughout the pandemic. Several others fell victim to the psychological effects of being isolated at sea for weeks, sometimes even months at a time, often with little to no access to any sort of mental health support. And in referring back to the aforementioned meta-analysis, it found that people with limited access to healthcare services or those that have pre-existing conditions are more likely to experience a greater degree of psychological stress.